Hi, my name is Tom Benji, and we're in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
I'm Carolyn Kenworthy.
This is a major trucking hub because 40% of the population of the country can be reached in a truck driver's driving day from here, which is, I think, 10 hours. So that's the reason why all these truck terminals and warehouses are here. The goal of the board is to clean up the air, the local air. There's a mission statement. Diesel pollution puts off soot, exhaust, and I'm sure you've seen it if you've been going down the road and see it coming out of the stacks of a truck. The part that's harmful to people is called PM 2.5, which means it's 2.5 microns or smaller in diameter. That means you can't see it. However, it contains 40 different toxins, some of which are carcinogens. That size is important because there's something else just called PM, particle pollution, PM10, which is larger in diameter. And the EPA has been monitoring that for some years, but they found that the hairs in your nose and things tends to filter that out. That tends not to be a problem. And more recently, they've determined that the PM 2.5, the smaller stuff, can get past all that down into your lungs and into the lowest recesses of the lungs and into the bloodstream. In the summer of 2005, August of 2005, Dr. Philip Carey, a local pulmonologist, drafted a letter, and Dr. David Masland, a retired internist, that's right, isn't it? Internist?
He prompted Phil Carey to write the letter.
Yeah, and then Dave put up the money because to get it published, he tried to have it published as an op-ed piece, but the newspapers made him put it in as an advertisement. That letter, before publishing it in the newspaper, he circulated it to all the members of the County Medical Association. And at the time it was published, there were over 100 physicians' signatures on it. By the time it was all said and done, 3/4 of the physicians in the county had signed it, which you can't get 3/4 of the physicians to agree on what to have for lunch, let alone something that serious. It was talking about the pollution created by the trucks because of the heavy concentration of truck traffic in the area, particularly the PM 2.5, also called fine particle pollution, or commonly called soot. Most of us had never even heard of PM 2.5. I suspect you may not have heard of it before. And most people in the country don't have to worry about it because overall in the country our air is getting cleaner. It's just not here. We've got a problem because of this concentration of truck traffic. The truckers are allowed to run 10 hours at a stretch. Then they have to shut down. They have to go off the road and rest for a period of time. Well, the truckers, we learned, would time things so they could come to Pennsylvania during their rest period because they were allowed to idle here, where the neighboring states didn't let them idle. So we became an idling magnet. When a truck is idling, it's not moving. It's sitting still. The purpose of a truck is to move goods. When the truck is idling, the engine is doing nothing productive. It's just sitting there. Now, granted, if you're stuck in traffic, you've got idle to some extent. But we've found some trucking companies found that something like 30% of the time their trucks were idling. Okay, this is something that the trucking companies were actually allies with us, because a truck burns roughly a gallon of diesel fuel an hour when it's idling. Diesel fuel is not inexpensive. It also unnecessarily wears the engine when it's idling. So most of the trucking companies have policies for the drivers to shut the things off if they're not going somewhere. But there's a culture that has to be overcome. In October of 2006, we went to the Capitol Rotunda, had a press conference, submitted the petition to the Environmental Control Board. It worked its way through the state bureaucracy slowly, and last November, right, it was announced that it was being enacted, and this year in February it went into effect. When the interstate highway program was enacted, when those laws were enacted, it was illegal. They made it intentionally, made it illegal for an interstate to connect directly with a toll road. So the Pennsylvania Turnpike, America's oldest superhighway, existed here many years before the interstate system. So there's a mile stretch on a local highway, two-lane highway, that vehicles must take to get from the Turnpike to I-81. That mile stretch has truck stops, you name it, cheek to jowl for a mile. Local people here sarcastically call it the Miracle Mile because it's a miracle if you're still alive after you've driven through it. The state DEP invested, I don't know how much was it, but in what they call the idle air facility. Okay, at one of the Petro truck stop just out on the Miracle Mile, where trucks come sit and park and idle, and for the drivers to go in and eat and get showers and all the sorts of things they do at a truck stop, they have these units installed in a number, what, 70 of them is it?
I think so.
In 70 parking spaces. So when they pull the truck into one of these idle air parking spaces, they have this apparatus that comes up to their window. I guess they roll down the window, put this thing in the window, roll the window up, and then seals all around. And it provides the heat, the air conditioning, the electricity for their computers, because inside these cabs of these trucks, they've got like apartments in there. And the idle air unit makes it possible for them to shut the engine off and still have it comfortable in there and be able to use all their equipment. It costs about, well, $2 and some change, I believe they said, an hour to sit in one of those slots. The alternative is to idle for an hour and use up a gallon of diesel fuel, which today is, what, 3 something? It's been fluctuating a lot. So it's actually cheaper to use the idle air spots than it is to idle. There's another side issue that is called the school buses, and Carolyn can tell you a little bit about school buses.
Well, there's been a big effort on the part of CAB to educate the personnel, the school drivers, and working through the superintendent's office, the principal's office, and so forth, about the need to protect the children. So the idling transitions to that. There are restricted to not idle any more than 10 minutes when they're lined up waiting for dismissal or to drop off.
In some ways, we're a demonstration of what people with no resources other than their own abilities and drive and initiative can accomplish.